It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Yaakov Velleman, originally from Amsterdam in Holland, and we're here in Velleman. And Yaakov, it's such a privilege to have you here, and if we could just hear a little bit about the history of your family and your connection to, or the family's connection to Anna Frank.
Yeah. I understood that. Thank you for inviting me, Les. It's also my pleasure of being here. Anna Frank is the key issue of the story. Hopefully, it doesn't disappoint. But I think it's an unusual story. I'm Yaakov Velleman. My Dutch name is Jaap. Coming from Holland, I made Aliyah 5 years ago, living in Beit Shemesh nowadays, and actually my name is Jaap, which is a good Dutch name, like John in English, or it's a good Dutch name. And I thought, well, I never realized actually how Jewish I was. It was never a secret in the family that we were Jewish, you know. My parents survived the war, and we were Jewish, but there was very little joy about Judaism, which is of course understanding.
And where were you born?
I was born in Amsterdam.
In what year?
In 46. Actually, I'm from August 46. So if you count 9 months is less, you come to December 45. Mm-hmm. And in that period, my parents did get all the messages of the family members of them who didn't live anymore. So it was a period of very big sadness. And my father didn't want actually no children anymore. He said the world is so bad. But I'm here. So my mother said, no, we take a child. Which you could say also a lot about it. But they were, of course, in that period, incredibly demoralized. You know, dead, not back, dead. Everybody was killed. So I was, you could call that a liberation child.
Were both your parents survivors?
Yeah, they were both hiding, and there's a story there also.
If you could just mention a little bit about the story, because it's very...
Well, actually, I know a lot about my family story. I have been in psychoanalysis for a long time myself. So that makes you thinking about your history. My mother is from a Fromm family, religious. That's where I think my interest is come. I'm a Balei Tshuva. Mm-hmm. I'm not brought up from, but I did bar mitzvah. I was bar mitzvah. But and my father is from a secular family. And that's already intriguing, because my father, when my father and mother married, at the marriage in 1940 or 39, I don't know exactly anymore. I'm always a little bit confused about those dates, but it's 1939 or 40. And from father's side, direct family, there were 80 people. You know, it was healthy families, you know, four children there, 5 children there, you know. They had healthy families. Of that 80 people, nobody survived. My mother is from a Fromm family, and she had a sister, a brother, her mother survived. So there was much more survivors than from the non-believing part of the family, which has meaning. As regards my own name, You know, I was brought up so-called very happily. You know, I was after the war and blah blah blah, and but I thought, yap. Well, am I Jewish? You know, I was doubting that I was Jewish, and there was no point. You know, we were Jewish at home, blah blah blah, etc. etc. But I thought, yap. Well, maybe many generations ago there was maybe a Jew in the family, but I never thought that I was from a real Jewish family.
Did your mother light candles? Did you keep any of the festivals or Shabbat?
No. And that was decisive for me, because when I was 13, 14, you know, you start living and blah blah blah, and I thought, well, what the hell is going on here? There's no white clothes at the table at Friday night. There was nothing at Friday night. So I thought, well, it's not important to be a Jew. That's what I thought. You know, if there's no... So I stopped interest in that.
In your bar mitzvah, did you...
That was my idea. I thought I'm a Jew and Jews become bar mitzvah. So it was a very rational thing. I thought, well, if you're a Jew and a Jew becomes a bar mitzvah, then it should be bar mitzvah.
And Yaakov, I have to ask, did you have Jewish friends? Did you grow up with any Jewish...
I always liked Jewish friends.
And the school you went to, it was a secular school?
We were a secular family. I went to a very good grammar school in Holland with secular Jews, but...
It wasn't a Jewish school?
No. No. So I was Jew, I never denied it. I was always looking for Jewish friends, but they were not really in the family. But my good friends in my young age were Jews, but all secular Jews. I was a pretty good tennis player, so they asked me for a Jewish tennis club in Amsterdam. Would you like to play for us? And actually that was to make a long story short, and that's not really nice to say, but the Jewish community is not a very pleasant community in Amsterdam. They were traumatized, they were hurt, they were damaged, you know, so you could have a good life, but there's always a lot of coolness, not expressing themselves, etc., etc., etc. And when I played in that club, I became a member of the first team, so I wasn't a bad player. And that was actually the final thing that I left Judaism, because the young people there were so spoiled. You know, that was the way, yeah, the families dealt with it, you know, and it was also the atmosphere at my house, at my home. You know, it was do whatever you like, whatever money you need, whatever blah blah blah, you know, live today, but because tomorrow you can be killed.
And Yaakov, I have to ask, did your parents take you to shul on Yom Kippur, or did you have a Pesach, a Seder?
No.
So when you went for the bar mitzvah, was it very strange reading?
I did some things, of course. I tried to enter, but it was all my initiative.
And you learned Hebrew for the bar mitzvah?
Yeah, I could read and sing. Yeah.
And was the rabbi very friendly, or was the community friendly when you had the bar mitzvah?
I had a teacher. My parents paid for that teacher, and I did my part of the parsha. We had, of course, a nice party in one of the best hotels in Amsterdam. You know, that I knew. You know, you get presents,
and which,
that was it. You know?
Which shul did you have it in?
It was at the Swammerdam shul. Yeah, I don't know whether it still exists. Yeah. Actually, it's well funny. You have Rav Evers in Holland. Rav Evers, which was a very good rabbi. He just made Aliyah to Israel. I don't know. No, he doesn't live in Beit Wagan. He lives in Rehavia. At least he intended to live in Rehavia. He is also went to Swammerdam Shul, but there was nothing there.
Yaakov, if you could just mention a little bit about your parents, how they were hidden. Did they actually speak to you when you were growing up about the Shoah, or how they were hidden?
Yes, actually they did talk, although my father was a very quiet man. He didn't talk. My mother did. So most of I know is through my mother. My father was quiet, depressed, and maybe I know about it, and maybe I don't know about it. But what I know that my parents were very modest people. When we come later to the Anne Frank story, I was growing up as a Jewish boy. My parents went through terrible things. Well, who am I? I had no bad experience in my life. Mm-hmm. They had all the trouble, they had all the misery, blah blah blah. And who am I? Pretty negative self-image. The Anne Frank story I discovered by incident. We lived in a nice house in Amsterdam, south of Amsterdam, and many times after eating, my mother went walking with the dog, and she asked whether I would join her.
Were you an only child?
No, I have a brother who is 6 years older, but actually he went to grammar school when I was 13. When he was 13, so I was 6 and he left already. So I was more or less only or lonely child, whatever you call it.
And he was also hidden during the war.
Yeah, he knows much more. And you asked me about this hidden story of my parents. Well, I can go on that further. They had to fly, they had to hide, they had to blah blah blah, whatever. My mother told me, but they were never talking much, Maybe they have here Yom HaZikaron, Second World War. We have that in Holland too. And that's the 4th of May. And the 4th of May, it was always quiet. At 8 o'clock at night, we had 2 minutes silence, They went to a memory place in Holland. But at home, it was terribly silent. There was no talking about the war. And then, after half an hour, it's on, and everybody goes it's off, and everybody goes his way. But they didn't talk much about it. If we talk about hiding of my parents, my father doesn't look very Jewish, so that was lucky. And my mother, after walking around a lot through Holland, she came to a small city, Kerk-Avezaath, in the Betuwe, which is the area, and there she worked for a farmer. She was a maid or whatever you call it. And next to that farmer was a blacksmith. Uncle Smitje. And why I tell that my mother made sure that my father could come also there and worked as assistant of Uncle Smitje. And that turned out to be a very special story. And actually it was my brother, but not only my brother, who brought it to the surface. what my parents were hiding there 2 or 3 years during the last years of the war, and they didn't have it really bad because it was a very small city. My father didn't look Jewish, so they could do whatever they liked, and but it turned out that Uncle Smitje was having 12 or 13 American soldiers on his ceiling, and he had 5 or 6 Jews there hiding, and but so that was more or less a hero. And to make a long story short, he is a Yad Vashem.
He was righteous amongst the nations.
Yes. Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer, my brother organized it, and he posthumous after he did get that honor.
And where was your brother? Was your brother with your parents as well?
Yeah, he is 6 years younger, so he is from 40.
But was he hiding with your parents as well?
Yeah. So he knew the story of Uncle Smitje very well. But what made the story of Uncle Smitje so special, it's already special hiding 19 people, you know. And of course my father was very happy to be there. But after a couple of weeks or months, whatever, he said to Uncle Smitje, "Hey, listen, you know, I'm a Jew. If they find me, you will be in great danger." So he said that I go. I don't want to stay here, my father said. I want to go. And then Uncle Smitje said, "Hey, you have to stay. I don't want you to go." My father said, "No, you're in danger. I don't want you to be in danger." And then he said, "God has sent you on my way, and then it's okay. You stay."
That's a real righteous. Do you know if he was Roman Catholic or if he was Protestant?
No, he was Protestant.
He was Protestant.
Yeah. And actually, so Uncle Smitje is everything. You know, without Uncle Smitje, I wouldn't have been here. And I knew that as a kid. And what my parents did, we went every 2 weeks to visit Uncle Smitje until he died. And even now there's still some correspondence with the family. And that's also, you know, that my parents didn't talk much about it, but, you know, of the people who were hiding there, and they visited Uncle Smitje for 15, 16 years after the war, something like that, and I always went with them over there. They were giving him money after the war, every month.
Your parents were giving?
Yeah.
But he didn't do it for money?
No, not at all. Not at all, but my father was a pretty successful businessman, so they supported him. And they did it. Actually, also after my parents died, we did it. Not a big amount, but they... But we were the only family of the 5 or 6 people who were hiding there who did that. But, you know, for my parents, and that's important because if we talk about Anne Frank, you know, for my parents the war was a closed story. Talking about therapy, talking about mourning, talking about his mourning process. No, they turned the page and said, "Yeah, you know, what shall we talk about it? We don't get our family back. So,
And Yaakov, with your brother, did he speak to you a lot about what happened with him during the war?
no.
He didn't want to speak, or he just...
Well, he left house when I was 6,
Yeah.
So there was not much, but actually there was and is an enormous difference in character between my brother and me, and between my parents, my mother, my father, and he. I always thought, I was always looking at that, and so it's my family. I love my parents, but I don't know where we are family.
Really?
So different.
Were you a close family, or?
Well, I said I love my family. My brother was difficult still, very difficult. There was always tension between. Finally, my parents ended pretty well, because after my father finished his business, they moved to Florida, and they had good years there. They had 15, 20 years. My father was 84 or 5 when he died. They had good years there. So finally, something went okay. But the atmosphere was not good at home, not at all.
And what did your brother do?
You mean in the war, or?
No, after the war.
My father was a merchant in meat.
And your brother?
He also went into business. Yeah.
And today, where's your brother?
Yeah, well, it's a long story. He lost his first marriage.
Oh, yeah.
There's also a tragic story where I know more about it than generally is known. But I don't know what that should be there. But he's a sailor. He lives on a boat. And he loves that. So he has a sailing boat, and he's in Portugal. And his second wife,
wow.
he was smart enough to get her interested, and he's happy there.
And does he have a family?
Yeah, he had a family. Yeah. Well, that's also a tragical story. It's not okay, that story.
But you have a connection. You still have a connection.
Yeah, we have, but not much. No. He's a difficult person.
Sure.
He's traumatized, and I'm traumatized too, actually. But he's really traumatized.
Sure, Yaakov, this is amazing. So how did you get onto the story with Anna Frank? Did you growing up at school?
I said, I was a teenager, adolescent, whatever, and I went walking one night with my mother. I just joined it. It was a summer night, and we just walked. We lived around. I still know the place, and we were walking, just chatting, and my mother said, "Yeah." I said to Otto Frank, "Watch Shaki." Otto Frank, what Shaki? I knew Frank, of course, what the name means, but and Shaki was a cousin of mine. So what Shaki? Yeah, Shaki was on the same train as Otto, so we asked him to watch after Shaki. So that's what I heard, and I thought, well, I didn't understand. I didn't understand at all. So well, there was some connection for some reason. I said. Many years later, I visit my parents in Florida, and at one night there was a terrible silence. All three were at home, sitting after dinner, whatever, and there was a heavy tension, very heavy tension. My mother started talking. And she said, Ilse Monash was a friend of mine. And Ilse Monash, now we're getting a little bit more interesting, was the secretary of Anne Frank, father.
Of Otto Frank.
Yeah, she was the secretary of Otto Frank. But my mother and Ilse were just friends, you know, like you could have colleagues, whatever. My mother was also a secretary. And after work, they made an appointment with each other that at a certain point in Amsterdam, the Raadhuisstraat, they would meet and then they would bike home together. But if Otto Frank went on a business trip, Ilse looked after Anne. So Ilse and Anne came to the house of my parents, who were just married at that time before the war, and they had dinner together. What the hell is going on? You know, my mother has a connection with one of the most famous Jewish people in the history. My mother, you know, I felt completely out of that story, and now my mother said, well, you know, she said she came at home, and we sung songs together after dinner. And then I said to my mother, why didn't you tell me? She said, well, why should I tell you? She said, Anne Frank was just a normal Jewish girl. Like, there were so many Jewish girls. So why should I talk about it? That night in Florida, my mother and my parents lost all their family. They didn't have anything anymore. So Ilse Monas came shortly after the war to my mother and father. And she was in great distress, Ilse Monas. And she said to my parents, because they found the papers of the diary of Anne Frank, and she worked with Otto to put them on better pieces of paper. So they worked very closely together. And by working very closely together, she fell in love with Otto. And Otto, full of sadness because he lost his wife such a short period before, said no. So that was, of course, for a young woman, you know, a big blast. So she went to my parents and talked to them and did the story. But my parents, also a little bit naive, of course, didn't really understand what was going on. 1 week later, Ilse committed suicide.
Oy.
And this is not known. It's not completely true that it's not known. There are a few people who know that, but not many. And actually, it happened to be. A couple of things are connected with it. It happened to be that I'm a psychiatrist and I have patients in Amsterdam. And one of the patients was a secretary, also a secretary, and she was married to a movie maker, also a documentary maker. And I forgot his name, unfortunately. I'm getting a little older, I forgot the name. But that documentary maker knew Otto Frank. And he visited him in Switzerland. And she confirmed the story. What I did, because my mother wasn't very talkative about it, but I asked him a little bit more. And it turned out that Ilse Monash had a sister-in-law. And that sister-in-law was still alive. We are talking now 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I don't know. But actually, she lived in Bussum, it's a small town in Holland. And I decided to see that woman.
Her sister-in-law?
Huh?
Ilse's sister-in-law?
Sorry?
Ilse's sister-in-law, you went to see her?
Yeah, of course. Because you want to check whether this is true. And she lived in a nice house in Bussum, which is a prosperous suburb in Holland. She was very surprised that I came. She said, well, that somebody is showing interest. You know, nobody showed interest in it. What are you saying? Nobody showed interest, she said.
That's amazing.
And she confirmed the story. In that time, I myself was in psychoanalysis. And that's actually also terrible to tell, because it's terrible and good, because psychoanalysis opened the road to Judaism for me. After that I became from. But the analyst, which was one of the best known analysts in Holland, of course I told him that story. You know, I was very happy that I found that, blah 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 blah. And you know how much interest he showed? It was very exciting for me. Eh?
I don't believe it.
Nothing.
No interest in that story?
Not at all.
You know, you mentioned about Anna Frank.
You know, that's the analytic, that was the analytic attitude in that time. You know, you stay neutral.
Detached, or to detach yourself.
You stay neutral.
It must have been very disappointing for you.
Well, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. So I was, you were enthusiastic, you know, I hardly told you anything. But you immediately were enthusiastic, interested. And so that was very nice. So I'm happy to be here. I, let people know this story. And, but you were actually the first. I didn't talk much about it, you know. Of course, when you are in psychoanalysis, you talk to your analyst, you know, and if he doesn't stimulate you further, or doesn't show real interest, well, you leave it.
So
I can tell you another thing, which people don't like. You know, I was. He was a well-known analyst, even known in the international community. And what I wanted to say. I don't know it anymore.
But your interaction with the psychoanalyst, it was a positive.
Oh yeah, I want to tell you how it finished. And at a certain moment, I said to him, "You're a goy."
And I'm Jew.
You're a non-Jew. And he said, and that's how it finished. I said, until now, and I was in analysis for 15 years, yeah, paid this guy. I said, for me, the word goy was just a word. You know, after this analysis, I know what it means. And he became furious, which is very unanalytic, of course. He said, "You." I said, "Yeah. Now I know what it means." And that's how the analysis ended. After that, I became, actually in my psychoanalysis, I was showing interest in Judaism. I took Hebrew lessons, and I liked it from the first second. So that was a good thing of the analysis. It opened the road.
And what made you decide to do the psychoanalysis?
Well, because you need that for your profession, you know. If you're a good professional therapist, analyst, you have to go through an analysis.
But do you think your parents being survivors and growing up in a family of survivors and the trauma and that could have had some impact on your decision that you wanted to?
Yes, of course. Of course.
Because there must have been some trauma there. It's a very, not dysfunctional, but it's a very difficult situation that you grew up in.
Well, I think a lot about it. I made Aliyah. I live much more Jewish. I learn every day. I enjoy everything. Everything in Israel is therapy for me. I enjoy it.
And you studied in Amsterdam, your degree?
Yeah, everything. Born and bred, everything. I had a practice in Amsterdam for 40 years. And I had a practice in Amsterdam for 40 years.
For 40 years?
Yeah. And actually, I decided also because of these experiences and also because of other things, you know, that there's a lot wrong with psychoanalysis. Well, I'm not the only one who's saying that, but I was a very loyal member of the whole club. I wasn't a rebellion. I'm not. I'm rebellious. Everybody is rebellious in some way, but I wasn't a real rebellion. You know, I was eager to learn. And but I decided it's not okay what they're doing. And after that, I went to make a long story short. I have now, and the practice still exists, a practice of psychotherapy, psychoanalytic therapy on a firm basis. I came across, after everything was finished, I took a sabbatical year. I went to yeshiva in Arnov, the Var Yerushalayim, with Rav Horowitz, who was there.
Who I know quite well, yeah.
And after that, I came across Yad Ezra. You have heard about Yad Ezra?
Sure.
Yad Ezra is a charity organization, one of the first organizations in Israel who started mental health after the war. Rav Uschi Freund started that organization in 1946, the year I was born. And it turned, and after the year in the yeshiva, I was asked to be a member of the advisory board of Yad Ezra in Holland, which is a big word, but they needed somebody who supported them in Holland. I said, well, I'm looking for chesed, so my honor. Make a long story there. I don't say yes. If I say yes, I want to know what I'm doing. So I went to Yad Ezra, I looked, and you know what I found there is quite amazing. They are doing fantastic work. I now in connection with Chabad Amsterdam, also doing fantastic work. But what actually it resulted, I started because I saw they could help people which are normally not helped in regular psychiatry. Hey, then you waking up, you know. You say, hey, they know what to do with people where the regular organizations don't know what to do. So I walked around there for 10 years, and I became much more interested in Hasidism, and also Breslev. They have very interesting things. We have a practice in Amsterdam where phone therapy is the basis. I was happy enough to come across a young psychologist who wanted to be a psychotherapist, who was from a Fromm family, Zimri Haas, and he took over my practice. And we have and there are not many practices in the world, maybe not one, who combine psychoanalysis and Hasidism. And you need knowledge, you know, you can't help people without knowledge, of course. But the basic attitude of a Hasid is what you need as a therapist. And Rav Usher learned me a lot, and I still figure out whatever we can. But that's in a short what happened.
I just want to ask you, Yaakov, what happens today if a non-Jewish patient wants to come to the practice?
Yeah, that's interesting. We don't put religious things on him. That's forbidden in Judaism.
You don't want to convert anyone.
No, not at all. That is not our interest, you know.
Yeah.
But we give him the principles, and also
it's universal. The principles are universal in a way.
Yeah. And we have, of course, a blueprint of life.
So true.
Psychoanalysis doesn't have a blueprint of life. You know,
you've combined. You've amalgamated the both. You've actually.
Yeah, we combine that. We impress nobody. You know, we don't put things on people. But they are grateful.
Yaakov, I'd like to ask you, being.
And I'm starting to write about it. I just published my first article. It's only a small part article, but and there are certain things which are essential in psychotherapy. You know, psychotherapy. Of course, Freud made a division. Yeah? So that was already crazy for me to go to yeshiva. You know, because Freud, religion was only something in your mind. He was a little bit more nuanced, because he said, religion is an idea, like any other idea. That was the time. But he never turned against Judaism.
Yeah.
He never turned against Judaism. And what is actually not known, that Freud, you know, and the secular world searched like hell to figure out who Freud was. You know, they looked, they wrote books, you know. I have biographies at home, blah blah blah. Nobody came to the idea that Freud is Simcha. Freud is Simcha.
The meaning.
Yeah, Freud is Freude, Simcha, which is a core issue.
Joy.
Yeah, core issue in Hasidism.
Of joy.
Yeah, and his father, the father of Freud actually, and that's also not really known, was one of the first Hasidim. You know, if we go back and back, Freud was end of the 20th century. No, what was it? 20th century? Yeah, end of 1900. No, end of 1800. It was end of the 19th century. Go back to his father. You come to the early Hasidim. You know, Hasidism was more or less founded in that period. And his father decided to be a Hasid. And his father was of course thrown out of the community. Because it was very from at that time, and he was thrown out. And why he was thrown out? Because he divorced his wife. Yeah, well, so if you know a little bit about it, you know that was an impossible position.
Wow.
And out of his second marriage, Freud was born. But the Freud, yeah, he was something of the Enlightenment period, of the scientific Enlightenment period. The people were living that, and but his birth act was in Hebrew. So, he never went the Jewish way, but he was not against Judaism.
It's true. Wow. Yaakov, I'd like to ask you, having lived most of your life in Holland, having been born there and grown up there, we coming outside of Holland always looked at Holland as one of the countries that was very, very good to the Jews, and that the Jews fared very well, until much later when we realized that the numbers of the Jews in Holland, it actually wasn't so good, and there were those that did hide, like your own parents were hidden, but there were many that were actually the opposite.
Nowhere in the world, or nowhere in Europe, were so many people transported as in Holland.
So how do you explain it? Because you have those that like your parents were, with families that sacrificed themselves, they under tremendous danger and risk to save total strangers, to save Jews.
For Uncle Smithje,
yeah,
it wasn't tremendous risky, because he knew
he believed in God. Yeah, he was God-fearing.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of those that informed on Jews, and and the Jewish community of Holland, the numbers are actually
terrible.
They are terrible.
Yeah. What's your question?
But how do you reconcile in Holland that there were those that were very pro-Jewish, and unfortunately there's a large amount of the Dutch that sided with the Germans or helped the Germans? Or
you could put that on the bureaucracy. They just did what they had to do. The Germans wanted to transport them, and they did it.
Did you ever have any anti-Semitism being in Holland, growing up and working and living in Holland?
Little. It's worse now, I think. And anti-Semitism is mainly because of Israel and the Arab conflict they have. No, I didn't come across much anti-Semitism.
You didn't.
But there's one thing which is important. You know, I never felt safe in Holland.
Really?
Though I was treated okay. I didn't come across anti-Semitism. I could make my career, blah blah blah. But since I live in Israel, I feel safe here. You know, it means something to be a Jew here. And if they come after me, well, they will know it, you know. And in Holland, I never felt safe, and I never realized that. I realize it now that I live here. And I'm getting from a world of very, very big unsafety, and it's, thank God, I'm feeling more at ease and safe here. It's not completely safe, you know. They could put a knife in you, but no, that doesn't matter to me. These are idiots, and you know. But for the rest, I feel safe here.
Oh, it's been amazing. So Yaakov, I just want to thank you. I mean, but it really has been absolutely unbelievable to hear your story, and I just want to really thank you.
Well, you know, it's good that people know that.
Well, Yaakov, I'm extremely grateful to you, and I really want to thank you very much.
No, but it's good that people know this, you know, because it's good that people know this, because there's so much denial in the world, you know.
And there's a lot of Holocaust now.
But there's so much denial in the world, not only because of the Holocaust, but also because what we are, you know. And I like, if we are ending, you know, and the world should know, if people know us, Jews, we are good people, you know. We are very good people, and you know, and it's for, I think, and that's one of the reasons I speak. You know, we should speak up as Jews. You know, we are not criminals. We are extremely civilized people. We are very human. We are very intelligent. Blah blah blah. We don't have to be better than other people. We are, but you know, the way they think about us, you know, is incredible. We should speak up. You know, we are very good people. At least many of us are very, very good people.
Yaakov, I want to also end off, and I want to just mention that Holland is special because if you look back in history, after the Inquisition, they accepted a lot of Jews came to Holland. They could practice the religion freely. I have over here in the bookshelf books from Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's what my mother.
They published the Gemaras.
My mother told me about the history, of course. And, in 1600 we were welcome.
Very welcome.
Yeah, we were good traders, but we were welcome. You know.
Well,
we were welcome in Holland.
I just want to wish you all the very best, and Ad Meivestrim in good health.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow, but it's true. It's a wonderful message that you've given. Thank you so much.
It should be. You know, I am not allowed to do it, but I do it because I don't mind. I had many people, very many people in therapy in Holland, and a lot of them had a lot of therapists. You know, 3, 4, 5 therapists was not unusual, and well, I say actually 2 things. I am not a bad psychiatrist, so I am the best. One of these people who was for 13 years in psychoanalysis with a guy in Amsterdam. I knew the guy. Actually, when I saw him the first time, I thought this guy has no talent. He doesn't know it. This patient is a notary in Amsterdam, so I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I don't mind. He's a well-known notary. And he came to me quite some years, and we stopped at a certain moment. He said, I'm okay, I'm already, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, and I'm very proud on this. Well, not really proud, but really happy. Because he said, I have a present for you. I said, you have a present for me? Well, so thank you very much. Here is a small packet, small bag. In the bag was a piece of gold. And he said, you know, I cannot pay you, He said, I cannot pay you. I said, well, you cannot pay me. He said, yeah, but I bought this small piece of gold because your worst, your life in gold. You know, what you did is worse.
It's worth more than gold.
I cannot pay you for that.
Wow.
Because I did one thing. I did what therapists and psychoanalysts consider as a very bad thing. I open my heart for patients. So I open my heart for you. You know, I speak up. And that did this man very well. So you worth your life in gold. That's what he said.
Well, Yaakov, you can see you have the personal. It's a personal touch. You have the connection. You connect with people.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't ask questions. You know, you want to see me. I look at this guy. I think he's more or less okay. He says, "Well, I like to meet you." No, that's enough for me. I'm not a fool, you know. If I had a sense of this guy is not okay, I wouldn't do that. But you know, I open my heart, and you know, that's a good thing for therapists. And we Jewish people shouldn't be silent, you know. We are looked up, and you know, they had a vote in the United Nations. You know, about whatever it is. You know, 80 countries condemn Israel. Condemn Israel. You know, how do they dare? We do so many good things in the world, you know. We are good people, you know. So now you may end. We are good people. Not all Jews, okay? But generally we are very good people.
Thank you so much, Yaakov, and I couldn't agree more. So I mentioned about the books. So here we have, I was very fortunate to receive this. This is, wow, it's very, very precious in a way. It was the Talmud that was published in Amsterdam, the original, and this is Sanhedrin, the Talmud of Sanhedrin, that was published in
1700 so much?
Yeah, if you have a look over here, it's got the insignia from Amsterdam.
Yeah, no?
They have the
Abide. Amsterdam. No, Amsterdam. No.
Yeah, it was in Amsterdam.
This is not the map.
And it was in Amsterdam. And what was interesting about these Gemaras, this is Avodah Zarah, also in Amsterdam. They were never censored.
Yeah.
They were never censored, unlike the
in other
the
countries.
one in the Vilna Shas had to be censored. So here is the Gemara from Amsterdam that was never censored, and I was just very fortunate to have this as well. This is the quite well-known Haggadah, also from Amsterdam.
Haggadah.
It was published in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So you come from a very
I know. My parents, despite what happened in Holland, I was educated pro Holland, pro Dutch.
Yeah. So a lot
I was educated pro Dutch. And later on, you hear other things about the story.
Still, when Holland plays, a lot of Israelis are very pro Holland and pro Ajax.
I know.
So I want to thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.